Imagine dying only to discover that death was not the end, but the beginning of a test, a journey through darkness, through gates guarded by creatures with knives for hands, lakes of fire, shadowy beings waiting to tear your soul apart. Ancient Egyptians believed every person would face this terrifying path after death, and to survive it, they created a guide, a forbidden collection of spells and rituals, buried beside the dead for over 3,000 years. Today we call it the Egyptian Book of the Dead. But this wasn't really a book, and what it reveals about how the Egyptians viewed death is far stranger than most people realize. To the ancient Egyptians, dying was not disappearing, it was transformation. They believed every human being was made of multiple parts: the body, the shadow, the name, the soul. And after death, these parts could become separated forever, unless the correct rituals were performed. This is why preserving the body became so important. Mummification was not simply tradition, it was survival. Because without a preserved body, the soul could become lost, trapped between worlds, wandering endlessly in darkness. And this fear shaped all of Egyptian civilization. Their tombs, their temples, their prayers, and their pyramids. Everything revolved around one terrifying possibility: what happens after the final breath? The Book of the Dead was never a single official text. It was a collection of spells, instructions, warnings, and sacred knowledge, carefully written onto papyrus scrolls and buried with the dead. Some versions were short, others stretched for meters. Wealthier Egyptians could afford more spells. The poor often entered the afterlife with almost nothing, which meant something horrifying. In ancient Egypt, even the afterlife depended on status. The Egyptians did not believe the dead automatically reach paradise. The journey itself was dangerous. Every gate had guardians. Every creature demanded passwords. Every mistake could mean annihilation. So the Book of the Dead became a survival manual for the soul, a map through the underworld. The Egyptian underworld was known as the Duat, a realm of darkness hidden beneath reality itself. It was not hell, but it was not safe either. The dead traveled through caverns, rivers, walls of fire, endless corridors filled with supernatural beings. Some had animal heads, some carried blades, some existed only to deceive the dead, and the soul was never truly alone. Something was always watching. The dead had to speak sacred phrases perfectly, forget a name, and the gate will never open. Say the wrong words, and the journey could end instantly. This is why the spells mattered. They were not symbolic poetry. The Egyptians believed these words had literal power. Guiding souls through this terrifying world was one of Egypt's most recognizable gods, Anubis, the jackal-headed guardian of tombs. Silent, watchful, emotionless, to modern audiences, Anubis appears monstrous, but to the Egyptians he was necessary because death itself needed a guide. Anubis protected the dead from evil forces. He watched over mummification rituals, and eventually he escorted souls toward the most terrifying moment of all. Deep within the underworld stood the Hall of Judgment, and inside it waited a scale. This was where every soul faced judgment before entering eternity. The dead would stand before powerful gods, while Anubis carefully removed their heart, not the brain, the heart, because the Egyptians believed the heart contained the true record of a person's life. Every lie, every act of cruelty, every hidden thought. The heart was then weighed against a single feather, the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth, balance, and cosmic order. If the heart remained lighter than the feather, the soul was judged pure and allowed to enter eternal paradise. But if the heart became heavier, if it carried too much corruption, too much evil, something horrifying appeared. A creature known as Amet. It was part lion, part crocodile, and part hippopotamus. Amet did not torture souls. She did something worse. She devoured them completely. To the Egyptians, this was the true horror of death, not pain, not fire, erasure, the complete destruction of the self, to vanish forever as if you never existed. The Book of the Dead reveals something deeply human about ancient Egypt. Beneath the gold masks and giant pyramids, beneath the gods and rituals, was fear. The fear of being forgotten. The fear that death might erase everything we are. And in many ways, the Egyptians fought harder against death than almost any civilization in history. They preserved bodies, carved names into stone, filled tombs with food, treasure, even games, believing the dead would still need them. They wanted eternity to feel real. But perhaps the strangest part of all is that these texts survived, buried for thousands of years beneath the desert, hidden inside tombs, waiting silently beside the dead. And now, We read the words of people who believed they had discovered the secret to surviving death itself. Not metaphorically, literally. The Egyptian Book of the Dead was more than just mythology. It was a roadmap through fear, a desperate attempt to control the one thing humanity has never escaped: death. And thousands of years later, the questions that haunted the Egyptians still haunt us now. What happens after we die? Are we judged? Is there something waiting beyond the darkness? Or, like the souls consumed by Amit, do we simply disappear? The ancient Egyptians believed they knew the answer, and they carried that answer into the grave.